Under the blazing sun of a late summer afternoon, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro stood before his generals and ranks of soldiers, defiant as ever, delivering words meant to echo far beyond the military parade ground. His voice, amplified across the grounds and broadcast nationwide, carried a message that was at once defiant, nationalistic, and confrontational. With the United States announcing new military operations in the Caribbean, Maduro framed his response as a vow of resistance. The Venezuelan leader declared in no uncertain terms, neither sanctions, nor blockades, nor psychological warfare, nor a siege. They have not been able to, nor will they ever be able to, never. There's no way they can get into Venezuela. For Maduro, this was more than rhetoric. It was a performance of sovereignty and resilience at a time of rising regional tension. Speaking in front of loyal troops and broadcast live through his official YouTube channel, he portrayed Venezuela as an embattled but unbreakable fortress. The phrasing was deliberate, repeating "no way" as if to drive home the message to his supporters and adversaries alike. There is no way they can get into Venezuela, he repeated, hammering the point that foreign intervention, particularly by the United States, would never succeed. This moment was crafted for symbolism, mixing military display with political messaging as cameras panned over soldiers standing in rigid formation, the Venezuelan flag fluttering in the background. The timing of Maduro's fiery statement was not coincidental. Just days earlier, Washington had announced large-scale naval operations in the Caribbean, a move framed by the Pentagon as part of its ongoing efforts to combat drug trafficking. US officials emphasized the importance of deterring smuggling networks that operate across the region. But in Caracas, the announcement landed like an earthquake. Maduro and his inner circle denounced the maneuvers as thinly veiled aggression. For them, warships patrolling waters so close to Venezuelan territory recalled the long history of American intervention in Latin America. The operation, dubbed a security mission by Washington, was reinterpreted by Maduro as a direct threat to Venezuela's sovereignty. Inside his government, the narrative was quickly constructed. This was not about drugs, but about regime change. Maduro cast the deployment as part of a wider US strategy to weaken, destabilize, and ultimately overthrow his government. His words on August 28th were therefore not just about naval patrols, but about an entire history of confrontation with Washington. The scene in Caracas highlighted how Maduro has increasingly relied on the military as both shield and stage. Since assuming power in 2013 following Hugo Chávez's death, Maduro has tightened his grip by leaning heavily on the armed forces. Over the years, promotions, privileges, and political roles have cemented the military's loyalty. This loyalty was on full display as Maduro delivered his address. Soldiers in fatigues chanted slogans of resistance. Armored vehicles were positioned as a backdrop. The performance carried an unmistakable message. Venezuela is prepared to defend itself by force if necessary. Analysts say such spectacles serve two purposes. They deter external adversaries by projecting strength, and they reassure the domestic audience that the government remains firmly in control. For Maduro, who faces a battered economy, international sanctions, and persistent political opposition, these moments of unity with the military are politically invaluable. When Maduro declared that neither sanctions, nor blockades, nor psychological warfare, nor a siege could defeat Venezuela, he was alluding to more than a decade of punitive measures. Since 2015, successive US administrations have imposed sanctions targeting Venezuela's oil industry, financial transactions, and high-ranking officials. These measures, Washington argued, were designed to pressure Maduro into restoring democratic norms, freeing political prisoners, and allowing fair elections. Caracas, however, portrayed them as collective punishment. Maduro's government often points to shortages of food, medicine, and equipment as proof that sanctions are strangling the Venezuelan people. Thus, when Maduro spoke on August 28th, he was framing the new US military operations not in isolation, but as part of a continuum: sanctions, blockades, and now, in his words, a siege. His speech blended military resistance with political defiance, casting Venezuela as a victim of imperialist aggression. Maduro's speech also reverberates beyond Venezuela's borders. Latin America remains deeply divided over how to approach the Venezuelan crisis. Countries such as Colombia and Brazil have often aligned with US positions, denouncing Maduro's government as authoritarian and illegitimate. Others, like Cuba and Nicaragua, see Venezuela as a partner in resisting US influence. In international forums, Russia, China and Iran have consistently defended Caracas, supplying economic aid, military technology and political backing. This has turned Venezuela into a geopolitical chess piece, with Washington on one side and Maduro's allies on the other. By declaring there is no way they can get into Venezuela, Maduro was not just addressing his own citizens, but also signaling to global allies that he would not waver, even under pressure. For ordinary Venezuelans, Maduro's defiance is familiar. After years of economic collapse, hyperinflation and shortages, his ability to project strength remains one of his core political tools. Opposition figures, however, argue that such speeches distract from the real crises inside the country. They accuse Maduro of using nationalism to deflect attention from food insecurity, power outages, and the mass exodus of millions of Venezuelans seeking better lives abroad. Nonetheless, among his base, and particularly those tied to the military and the ruling Socialist Party, such rhetoric resonates deeply. For them, Maduro's message of resistance validates their belief that Venezuela is under siege by foreign enemies and that defending sovereignty is paramount. The August 28th event was carefully choreographed to maximize this effect. Television coverage emphasized cheering soldiers, national symbols, and Maduro's strong delivery. The repetition of key phrases, especially the emphatic "no way," was designed to instill confidence and pride among supporters. The confrontation between Maduro and Washington is not new, but moments like this illustrate how each side frames the conflict differently. For US policymakers, Venezuela represents a failed state, mismanaged into crisis, and a hub for criminal networks. For Maduro, the United States is the aggressor seeking to topple a sovereign government through sanctions, propaganda, and military intimidation. By staging his speech before the military, Maduro tied his personal survival to the defense of national sovereignty. The visual cues, uniforms, weapons, flags, reinforced his central message: Venezuela is a fortress that no foreign power can breach. Observers note that Maduro's defiance carries echoes of Hugo Chavez, his predecessor and political mentor. Chavez often used similar language, railing against imperialism and presenting Venezuela as the vanguard of resistance in Latin America. Maduro's repetition of neither sanctions nor blockades, nor psychological warfare, nor a siege directly channels this tradition of anti-imperialist rhetoric. By invoking this continuity, Maduro positions himself as the rightful heir of Chavez's Bolivarian revolution. For his supporters, it affirms loyalty to the legacy of resisting foreign dominance. For critics, however, it feels like an empty echo, masking the failures of governance with slogans of defiance. The question now is how far this war of words could escalate. With US naval forces patrolling the Caribbean and Venezuela staging displays of military readiness, the risk of miscalculation remains. Analysts warn that while a full-scale invasion is unlikely, incidents at sea or in disputed waters could trigger dangerous confrontations. Meanwhile, Venezuela's internal crises persist. Inflation continues to erode wages, public services remain fragile, the healthcare system struggles under shortages. For many Venezuelans, the immediate battle is not with foreign troops, but with the daily grind of survival. Yet on August 28th, Maduro chose to spotlight the external threat, insisting that sovereignty comes first. His words, captured on national broadcast and shared worldwide, distilled his message: defiance, resilience, and absolute rejection of foreign intervention. As the event concluded, Maduro raised his fist, saluted the troops, and reiterated his promise that Venezuela would never fall to outside forces. The sound bites, clipped and shared on social media, traveled quickly, becoming headlines in both sympathetic and critical outlets. The line that captured the essence of his message remains unmistakable: there is no way they can get into Venezuela. Neither sanctions nor blockades, nor psychological warfare, nor a siege. They have not been able to, nor will they ever be able to. Never. There is no way they can get into Venezuela.
No hay, ni jamás. No hay forma de que le entren a Venezuela.